Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. I have a message for you today. It is that new information is being revealed to you. So in this reading, we're going to look at what is this new information, why is it being revealed to you, and why is it being revealed to you right now? All right, let's pull some cards. Okay, so we have the Four of Cups here. And this is kind of like a feeling of, being given a message, but maybe not being able to see the message or understand the message, kind of rejecting it, looking away from it maybe. All right, and then we have the Six of Wands here. And this is some feeling of like leadership qualities maybe. So maybe some of this information is going to help you step up into a leadership role. All right, and then we've got the Chariot. Okay, so this is kind of this feeling of like, maybe you thought that you already had all the information you needed, but now new information is being revealed to you to show you that you had a very limited grasp of what was out there for you to know. So this Chariot feeling is almost this false sense of confidence or false sense of security maybe, where you felt like you had already reached the top of your game, and this new information that's being revealed to you is showing you that you're actually just kind of at the beginning of your journey. And that maybe the pillars that you had built some of your really strong convictions on are starting to fall away, and you're starting to realize that maybe these strong convictions were actually mistaken, and especially with this new information that's being revealed to you. But I get the sense there's something blocking you from receiving this message in its entirety, and I really feel like it is a sense of like feeling alone, like the singular feeling of ego almost, of like thinking I'm the only one, I'm a world unto myself. And this is not entirely correct, because I think you're thinking really within this small, limited mindset in some ways, where you're kind of thinking of just the scope of your life. And so the information that you knew already was everything you needed to make the best of your life as this one single being. But I think the information that's being revealed to you now is something relating more to like an interconnectedness, or maybe some sort of soul purpose that extends just beyond yourself. And I get the sense that you are going to be a leader in some ways, of like almost like a thought leader is kind of the sense that I'm getting. Like maybe you're ahead of your time. And I think that this information is something that is going to help put you in that position of not just having good leadership skills, which I think you already possess. Like I think that was the information that you already had access to, was like how to be a good leader. But the information that's being revealed to you now is something about like, what are you actually leading? And yeah, with this Chariot also, it's like this feeling of kind of being at the forefront, kind of pushing forward, and with this horse going forward, like you're driving something forward, some sort of movement or way of thinking or way of being that you're going to embody with this new information that's being revealed to you is really going to help you step into this role. All right, we had a couple cards come out here. Okay, so we have the Nine of Pentacles, and this is such a beautiful card. It's this feeling of like calm and peace and like this delicate kind of balance almost. So maybe it felt like you were kind of had this delicate balance in your life, and this new information is kind of upsetting that in a way of it's almost like also this feeling of like a message being delivered to you maybe in this kind of peaceful state. So maybe the reason why this information couldn't be revealed to you earlier is because you weren't at this state of peace and security in your life where you were ready to absorb it all. So maybe you had some things relating to like financial insecurity, or your living situation was a little unstable, but now that you're in a more stable, confident, empowered place, this information is now being delivered to you in the form of some sort of message. And then we also have the High Priestess coming out. So again, this is like this really strong feeling of like a feminine power is kind of what we're getting in these two cards. And with a High Priestess, it is this feeling of initiation almost. Like again, you are really at the beginning of some sort of journey, where maybe if you had really felt like you were in this Chariot energy of like charging ahead, that's why you had felt like, okay, I have everything, I've already begun. But I think the High Priestess is kind of coming in to like almost humble you in a way of showing you all these things that you didn't know. So maybe this is relating to the new information, is like really showing you gaps in your understanding of things, where maybe you had the information but you hadn't understood it fully, because to truly understand something you need to integrate it into a higher system. It can't just be like a platitude, like one sentence of being able to repeat something based on rote memorization is not actually understanding. So I think the High Priestess is showing you that you need to place some of these things that you've picked up along the way, things you thought you understood, and actually place them into this new framework that you're starting to enter into, especially relating to this feeling of like your soul's purpose, and kind of the understanding that you're a part of something bigger, and now seeing how the information you've learned in the past can be integrated into this new system. All right, so let's get some guidance on kind of, again, like this feeling of your purpose, like something bigger than you, and like what this information is striving to help you achieve. All right, death. Okay, kind of a scary card at times, of course, but also this feeling of renewal. So I think you're starting to understand that death is not necessarily the end for you or for your soul's purpose. Where maybe before you thought, like, I have these few short years on this earth to accomplish these things. And yes, that is true. And this is like the old framework that you are working with. But I think now you're starting to understand that your death is related to your soul's purpose, and that actually aspects of your soul continue on after your death. Like, for example, you might write a book, and a lot of books that are very considered to be in the canon today were actually only discovered hundreds of years after the author died. Or even maybe the author was kind of somewhat well known when they were alive, but then their death has brought kind of a new renewal, like a new appreciation to their works. So I get the sense maybe some of the work you're doing in your life right now might be discovered after your death. And as we've all had this experience, it's like a piece of art or a piece of writing can really change us. So I get the sense that part of your soul's purpose is to create messages and things that will be discovered after your death and will change the lives of other people. And in the sense, there's this feeling of interconnectedness where you've delivered a message that maybe won't be heard in your lifetime, but you will be like this kind of like leader in a certain school of thought after your death. And that the school of thought is going to continue on for many years and be part of a tradition. And it's also this feeling of maybe you've been kind of communing with the dead in some ways, and maybe not necessarily in some spooky, mysterious way, or maybe not even in like some specific way of like ancestor veneration, but it could be something more vague. So maybe if you're reading a book by someone, like I mentioned, who has maybe died many years ago, and your work is really influenced by them, it's almost this feeling of you're working in the same tradition, and in a sense you're keeping the soul of that way of thinking alive, or like that thought form is kind of continuing on through you participating in this tradition and through you reading these works and internalizing them. So in the sense, like, these ideas kind of live on within us. And again, this is this feeling of transcending the ego, of not just one person's ideas being carried on throughout time, of like, this is like a certain person who we're now venerating, but it's more like these schools of thought live on through different people, and it's almost this feeling of humbling where everyone understands that they're participating in this bigger tradition than just their one contribution. It's really this whole idea that's being kept alive, and that death is a part of it. So just as the sun rises and sets, so too do humans rise and fall. But this is not necessarily the end when you think about it in this the sense of transcending the ego. Is almost, it's a new life upon your death, in a way of like, there are things you can't accomplish in your lifetime, in these short 80 or so years that we have, or maybe less or more, hopefully, but that it almost requires maybe like lots of people, like dozens or maybe hundreds of people over many lifetimes to really get an idea evolved, or have something come to fruition in a way. So I think you're starting to understand that maybe some of the messages you're delivering might carry on to these new people who will be born in the future, and in that sense, like, your ideas are living on through them and being strengthened by them in the future. So it's really this feeling of like, kind of welcoming and accepting death, and maybe coming to terms with your own mortality could be a big part of why this information was being withheld from you in the past, was maybe you were still clinging to those kind of last threads of like, really putting too much value on your mortal life in some ways, where maybe if you had accepted just like verbally, like, I know I'm going to die, maybe it hadn't fully sunk into you yet, because it does require a lot of meditation on the concept of death and rebirth, the mystery of death, and this kind of internal feeling with like yourself as a biological organism, but also with this greater tradition of humanity. that maybe it took a long period of meditation on this topic for you to reach the state where you're able to actually accept these messages and really understand them. Like I mentioned, it's like maybe on a surface level you understood that you'd be remembered after you die, or maybe you had hoped for that in some sort of kind of like ambitious way of like, I want to achieve something so that I'm remembered after I die. But now I think you're getting to the point of understanding that you're part of something bigger. Like, there's the Kate Bush song, Symphony in Blue, and she mentions, like, now I understand that I'm needed for the symphony. And it's this feeling of we all have our roles to play, we all have our parts designated for us. And it's almost this feeling of timelessness and of eternity where these parts are not necessarily something we can decide for ourselves. In a way, they were written before we were born. And because time doesn't necessarily flow in the way that you might have thought it did, like if you were clinging onto this old thought pattern of like ego and being really isolated in this world and feeling like this is it, your body is it, and when you die, you're gone. It's almost this feeling of like not really understanding that you were participating in something bigger. And now it's kind of expanding in this way. So new possibilities are opened up to you when you start thinking in this new way. All right, let's draw a few more cards on what this information might be. Okay, so we have the Five of Pentacles here. And this is these poor, suffering, cold people, injured people out in the cold. And then contrasted with this warm interiority of the church here. And it's this feeling of like helping people, of charity in a sense. And I think you're starting to understand that your soul's purpose is to maybe make the world a better place, to give a little bit of a platitude, but maybe in a more practical way of just like improving people's lives and working for the good of humanity to a point where like there's not this feeling of people being shut out from the warmth and people being left out in the cold, but this kind of more integrated way of like all of humanity being able to work together for the betterment of all. And I think that this is something that you understand that you are working towards. And it might not necessarily look like something you're doing in your lifetime where like the ills of our society are not going to be solved within your lifetime. And you can't solve every problem. And you can't necessarily criticize the state of things either. Like, even though there are things in this world you might disagree with on a moral level, you also might understand that these things had to happen for humanity to evolve to the point that it's getting to. Like, this is all part of the process. And going back to this feeling of time is like, so yeah, if you were in this old mindset of like seeing time as this linear path of like, once this day passes, it's over, and I'm here in the year 2026, and everything before me is gone, and everything in the future is not yet happened, and it's just now. And yes, being in the here and now is good, but there's a different way of looking at time where maybe all of time is kind of happening simultaneously, and your presence in the moment is helping you connect to that feeling of being present in this infinite way of looking at time. So rather than putting so much focus on the present moment as like this moment is all there is, of like all that I am is this ego being in the year 2026, but looking at it more as like each moment is a part of eternity that is the opportunity to shift something in the world that aligns with my soul's purpose, or put into action some of these feelings or ideas that you might have had. Is that it almost requires this dual feeling of like understanding that the present moment is eternity. All right, let's draw another card. Judgment. Okay, so I think, again, this is this feeling of, like, something happening after death, right? As you can see, like, all these figures are rising from their coffins. And it's this feeling of, like, being revitalized, or that you're being woken from the grave in some way. So maybe you previously felt like, you know, your achievements are not recognized, or there's not really any point, this feeling of meaninglessness, yes. But I think you're starting to understand now that in a way, like, all your actions are judged in some way, all your actions are meaningful, and it's through this judge that is greater than any one person on earth. So I think once you've stopped looking for validation in your material world from the people around you, from authority figures, or this feeling of validation of like monetary success or fame, and released all of that, and really work towards this like holy judgment of like having achieved your purpose and acted in a way that you feel is like correct, maybe not necessarily in a sense of like right or wrong, but just in this feeling of the right path. Like judgment is you've walked the correct path and now your deeds will be trumpeted in a sense. So I get the sense you're really understanding this path that you're meant to walk and the judgment that is associated with it now. Whereas previously, because you hadn't understood this path fully, there were certain aspects of guidance that couldn't be given to you, just because you were really stuck in this feeling of needing validation from the material world. So because you were so focused on things that might happen during your lifetime, your purpose couldn't be revealed to you for things that might happen outside of your lifetime, or maybe the way that you will be judged after your death. You just weren't open to it, like I mentioned, because if you weren't fully accepting of your own mortality, these concepts just couldn't be processed in your mind. All right, let's draw maybe a few more cards on where you're at now. Okay, justice. Okay, and it might be tempting to think that justice and judgment are kind of similar in some ways, and yes, they are. But with this feeling of justice, it's very much like a balancing feeling and like a swift kind of action in a way, where, okay, maybe there was this feeling of the world is not just, but I think that you're starting to realize, like when you look at it on this greater level, that maybe things that you were judging to be like, this is fair or this is unfair, again, it was like really tied to this material world sort of sense of like, I've done all these good deeds, but I'm not happy because I don't have the exact house I want, or I don't have the exact partner I want, and feeling like life is unfair because of that, and almost like your efforts were in vain. But I feel like what this card is revealing is more relating to a justice that is done on a higher level, which is like outside of the material world. There is some justice for your soul and the thriving of your ideas, and maybe if you think of it as like where your soul will be after you die, it's almost this feeling of like the justice will be in the way that you were reborn, your ability to reincarnate on this earth, and maybe like a feeling of like heavenly pleasures that necessarily can't be felt on earth. And so if you're feeling like life isn't fair, I haven't gotten justice, or there's these people in the world who haven't gotten their justice, like I think you're starting to understand more that like these things aren't necessarily delivered in the earthly realm. And so I feel like, again, like this is opening up your mind to new possibilities, and this is really relating to like new guidance you could be given now that you're thinking of these new possibilities. All right, maybe let's see like what is this new possibility. Ooh, the Wheel of Fortune. Oh, how interesting, how interesting. So again, we have this feeling of the wheel turning, similar to like what I was mentioning with the Death card of like the sun rising and setting. Similarly, the wheel continues to turn. And specifically with the presence of Anubis on this card, of this this like deathly figure, but also like relating to the sun's rise and fall. And as you can see, all the figures on this card are deep in study at their books, and it's this feeling of like absorbing knowledge and working towards something that is helping to turn the wheel, and not necessarily in the sense of like specifically books, like writing a book, even though I mentioned that earlier, but it's almost like this grand accumulation of understanding and experience that is collective in nature, and this feeling of like all of humanity is working to gather more information, more sense perception, just more everything about the world, and your contribution to that through your awareness and consciousness in the present moment. So through every observation you make, and through connection to yourself as a living being and a spiritual being. You're helping this wheel turn. And I get the sense that this information that might be revealed to you when you're more in the state is, again, like relating really to your soul's purpose and the outcome of the world in general. Like, I think you're starting to understand that your actions are actually way more meaningful than you thought before, where maybe, like, again, like you felt really isolated, you felt really stranded, you felt like nothing really matters, you're just one person. But now you're starting to understand that there's actually this gravity associated with everything that you think and do because of the fact that you're connected to this feeling of something bigger than you. And there is this feeling of like, almost like a guarded sort of, the way the machine works is almost a riddle. It's not something you can understand with your mind. So if you try and logically reason it out of like, if I do this thing, this is going to happen, or write down on paper, this is my soul's purpose, like you're never going to be able to do that because it's something you just can't grasp with your ego mind. Like I mentioned, it's like these aspects of your soul that were existing before your birth, of like traditions that you're working in and things that will happen after you from the work that you're producing. Like you are incapable of knowing these things while you're just bound to your ego mind in the current day. But I think some of this information that is going to be revealed to you is almost going to sort of light up the path in a way where like maybe this stuff was very obtuse to you before, but now it's starting to be illuminated in a sense where you might not necessarily be able to see all the outcomes, but you almost are starting to understand that there will be an outcome from certain actions that you take, where it almost is like, yeah, I'm getting this feeling like it's glowing. Like when you're guided in a video game and there's like the key object that you're supposed to pick up and it glows bright yellow and you just kind of know like, okay, this is part of it. That's kind of what I'm getting, is this feeling of like the things that are being revealed to you are it's a new way of seeing, and new things will be revealed to you through this new way of seeing. All right, let's draw a few more cards on why you're being shown this information right now. Aw, this is like my favorite card ever, the Six of Cups. So it's this feeling of this childlike friendliness and unity, and it's like being given a gift, where this like boy is giving this girl little flowers in a cup. That's so sweet. It's just so cute. And I feel like it's almost like the universe is giving you a gift now that you've understood that you have a role to play and you're participating as an aspect of a large collected unity consciousness. It has this feeling of like, now the world will give back to you in a way, where if you had only been working in service of the ego before, then it was only the ego serving you in a sense. So when you were acting from that place of it's just like me, the human being, in this short lifetime, like that's kind of all you're getting out of life. But when you look at it as like, I'm a part of something bigger and I'm one with everything, for another platitude, then this everything then gives back to you and it almost accepts you into its fold. And in a way, you were always already in the fold, but because you were blinded by your ego mind, like you weren't able to see that you were part of this. And hence why you might have rejected these messages from the universe, or from the eternal Tao, or whatever you want to call it. That previously you were rejecting the messages, but now you're open to them. And so that is why they're coming to you now, is just because you have opened yourself up in this new way. And this kind of gentleness of this softening, where like, if we go back to this, let's see if we can find it here. We pulled a lot of cards today. The Four of Cups here, where it's rejecting, and it's almost this like kind of bitterness almost of like the cynical feeling, whereas and it's like an adult as well, so that's kind of where I associate these feelings of like, you're getting older and getting bitter and just like, the world doesn't have much to offer me, so you're rejecting these messages. Whereas this is reconnecting to a sense of childlike wonder and childlike connection with the world. And in a sense, it's also guidance of like how to connect more into this feeling is to really reconnect with your inner child, or like you as a child, because I know that sometimes the term inner child gets like a little bit hated on as like a buzzword or something like that, but it really is true that there is a child alive inside of you. Oh my god, that's kind of a funny way of putting it. But like, if you think of age, like, again, like not as this linear line, but almost as this it's almost like a circle, but almost more like a spiral. So in a sense, you're coming out of the center that was your consciousness when you were first born, and spiraling out as you become an adult. But like, you haven't lost that consciousness that you had when you were born. Like, it's still there within you, but it's kind of like deeper under the layers, because how I see it is like a spiral going up. And so it's like this child is still within you, and it is you in a sense of like, okay, sure, on the level of mind, you've matured in some ways, your body has matured as well, but this child in you is your essential consciousness. And it's something that needs to be nurtured. And if you are struggling to connect this feeling of really connectedness and feeling at one with things, and this feeling of being a living being, but also being a spiritual being, what I would really recommend is like doing things intentionally to reconnect with your inner child. And this could look like really specific activities. Like, it could be something you enjoyed doing as a child, like just getting out a piece of paper and playing with crayons, or maybe playing pretend in some ways, like dressing up and like playing a role. It could be really fun for you. Or it could just be like a really nurturing presence, connecting with your inner parent archetypes as well, of like, okay, this little kid is tired. I'm gonna tuck her into bed and let her take a nap, instead of being like, you're not working hard enough. You need to keep going. No, that's not what a nice nurturing parent would do. You'd be like, okay, she's tired. Let her rest. So it kind of has this feeling of nurturing coming from within yourself, but also like connecting to these larger archetypes. So when you're connecting to your inner child, it isn't just you as a child. Also, it almost goes beyond it into this feeling of like the child within us all, the parents within us all. Like, we all have the capability to express either, and when we come into harmony with that within ourselves, it brings us just a whole new way of experiencing the world, and this feeling of wholeness that we might have been missing, where maybe you felt like, I was a neglected child, or maybe I have this nurturing side but I have no one to nurture. But you're starting to realize like you have it all within yourself, and the ability to exercise all these things. All right, well, I feel like this has been a great reading so far. I feel like it's really illuminated certain topics and maybe given you some guidance on next steps to take. But maybe let's draw a few more cards just on like specifically these next steps and mindset shifts that you might need. The Fool. Oh, what a wonderful card to pull. As you can see, I'm in my clown makeup today. Well, this is like a really subtle clown makeup that I have to do for work. I mean, I wear clown makeup to work sometimes, but I know it kind of gives my managers a little freaky, so like I play it down a little. But the Fool is this feeling of like, yeah, like you have everything you needed already, in a sense. Like, the information was already there within you, but now it's just being revealed. Almost like veils are being lifted, and then new layers within yourself are being revealed to you, but you already had it all. Like, as you can see, the Fool already has all he or she needs, or they, in this little bag. And you might be thinking, what are these precious aspects in the bag? Well, I read an interpretation by P.D. Ouspensky, one of my favorite mystics and writers, who said that, I mean, this could be a wider interpretation. I don't actually know if he came up with this, but that the Fool carries the magical objects, like all the suits of the tarot, the cup, the pentacle, the wand, and the sword within his bag. So it's this feeling of like, that is all you need. These base archetypes and symbols that you already had within you and that you felt connected to in some ways. And these also correspond to these elements of water, earth, air, and fire, of like, the connection to these is really all you need. You don't necessarily need all these books and manuscripts and ancient alchemical texts and YouTube videos and lecture series and all this. No, you already had everything, but it was just a matter of it being revealed to you, of understanding maybe how to use and work with these essential symbols. And the Fool is also this feeling of taking a leap of faith, of trust in yourself and in the universe, which is essentially the same thing, of kind of putting your trust in this, in everything, of like understanding that the world is kind of working for you, and because you've you have this specific role to play, it's going to be acted out for you. Like, you're going to see it unfold when you take that leap of faith. And the leap of faith is essentially trusting in this oneness of things. And this feeling of purity that comes from it is not necessarily being tainted by these maybe cynical ideas that we've picked up about the world, of the world is out to get you, or if you don't make enough money, you're going to be a really sad, pathetic person. And just like all these things that we've picked up in our life experience that have hardened us into the adults that we are, is kind of going back to this feeling of purity, of this this emanating light from within us, and understanding that that is all we need. We don't necessarily need anything in this material world to fulfill our soul's purpose. I mean, certainly there will be things in the material world that will help us, but it's not like we need those things first before we can begin, right? Like, you're already on the path, you just have to jump right into it. All right, and let's draw one final card to close out this reading. All right, we have the Three of Wands. Ooh, and this is this figure with its back turned, and it's kind of like looking out onto this desert expanse. And it's really this feeling of almost like you've broken new ground in a way, and now this territory is yours to explore and build on. So maybe before you kind of had this feeling of like, I need like a physical domain in order to begin my work, but I think you're starting to understand that the work begins within this domain of your mind that is essentially this blank field for you to build your castle upon. And so this really strong, kind of powerful feeling of like looking out onto your domain is something that I think you're doing right now, is kind of taking inventory on things, and just this, like a feeling of like putting stakes down in the ground. Is that now that this information has been revealed to you about your life's purpose and your soul's purpose and your place in the world, I think it's saying that it's like, okay, now it's time to put roots down and really start building a foundation in this new way of being. And keep on working. Yeah, I hope that this reading was helpful to you guys. I feel like it was a lot of fun for me to do. I miss doing readings. I was taking a little break because I got sick, and then the sore throat was just, it wouldn't be pleasant for you guys to watch. But I hope to be making more videos in the future, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.